Holland. The Netherlands. This country can boast not only stale stereotypes but also a lot of the things they don't tell tourists about. We've compiled a few fun facts about this diverse country. Watch this video till the end, it's gonna be fun. Let's go. Let's start with perhaps the most important stereotype, that the Netherlands and Holland are one and the same. In fact, this is not quite true. The Netherlands is the official name of the state, which includes 12 provinces. And since the late Middle Ages, the most developed of them are North and South Holland. And most often, the inhabitants of these provinces traveled around the world. It also produced and still produces most of the goods for export. Therefore, the name Holland is widely known. By the way, the fact that the Netherlands is called Holland is very annoying for the Dutch themselves. The Dutch government is confident that this is harmful to the image of the country. According to officials, the word Holland has become an anti-brand associated with drugs and prostitution. Well, let's just say that such a reputation didn't appear out of thin air. Prostitution in the Netherlands is officially allowed. It has been legalized since 2000 and brings an average of about $100 million a year to the economy of this country in the form of taxes. All brothels are under strict government control. Another stereotype is associated with tulips. The Netherlands has been associated with these flowers for centuries. Many people believe that they appeared there. But in fact, their homeland is Turkey. Tulips came to Europe from the Ottoman Empire only in the 16th century. In 1562, the first large batch of Turkish tulips was brought to the city of Antwerp. Gardeners from Europe were very fond of this flower and saw the similarity between its shape and the traditional Turkish headdress. They gave it the name tulipan, from tulband, the Turkish turban. Today, the Netherlands is considered the largest producer and exporter of tulips in the world. And not just tulips, 75% of all flower bulbs on Earth are of Dutch origin. But, generally speaking, the birthplace of flowers is changed by globalization, like everything else in our lives. The bigwigs of the flower business now grow flowers mainly in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The Netherlands is also moving production to these countries. However, it is still the world leader in the flower trade. But at the same time, an increasing number of goods is imported. The exception is bulbous flowers. They are grown in the country, as before, in large quantities. In a good year, small farms, for which this has been a traditional occupation for several generations, sell up to 10 billion tulip bulbs. This is 70% of the total production of tulips in the world. They sell flowers on the Flora Holland flower auction, which has been trading flowers for more than a century. It includes 5,000 companies that grow flowers. The auction is carried out using an auction clock, which shows the current price of a particular lot instead of the time. The bidding duration is less than a minute. As soon as the buyer sees an acceptable price on the clock, he presses the button, stopping the auction. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. The underwater part is a giant hangar with huge refrigerators, special rails, and electric cars that scurry through this ocean of flowers. But let's move from the flower hangars to the city streets. What do ordinary people do if they see that it's raining outside the window? Take an umbrella before going outside. But the inhabitants of the Netherlands do not do this, preferring raincoats. After all, you can't ride a bicycle with an umbrella. This is the most favorite transport of the Dutch. There are more of them here than there are residents. 18 million against 17. During the Second World War, the German army exported a very large number of bicycles from Holland. For this, the Dutch still make fun of German tourists, saying, "Return our bicycles." Despite the craze for bicycles, the Netherlands holds the record as the country with the lowest rate of injuries while riding this vehicle. And cycling under the influence of alcohol is strictly punishable by law, as well as driving without a flashlight in the dark. Bicycles are popular, among other things, because in addition to rain, nature does not particularly interfere with cycling. There are almost no cracking frosts here, so it's only fitting to ride all year round, as they say. Well, if there comes a rare winter when all the rivers freeze, then they organize the famous skating marathon throughout 11 cities with a length of 124 miles. Skating is also one of their oldest traditions. Whatever we think about the super advanced and developed Netherlands, they can be called a country of villages with a clear conscience. Despite the highest population density in Europe, it is easier to meet a resident of the countryside than a city dweller. And how could it be any other way, if there are about 60 cities in this country, of which only 4 are large? But there are as many as 479 villages. Hence another achievement of this state. The Netherlands is among the leaders in the export of agricultural products. Only China, the United States, and Germany are ahead of them in this. Also, this country is a world leader in the export of seeds, live trees, and plants in general. For example, the country sells seeds for a couple of $1 billion a year. At the same time, it does not supply the seeds of genetically modified products to the market. And all this despite the fact that the Netherlands cannot boast of huge territories. The area of the country is only around 16,000 square miles. But this agro-abundance was not always there. Production has increased so much thanks to the country's new agricultural policy, which it adopted 2 decades ago. Produced twice as much for half of the available resources. Since 2000, farmers have reduced water consumption for irrigation by 90%. They have almost completely abandoned the use of pesticides in greenhouses, and since 2009, Dutch poultry farms and slaughterhouses have reduced the use of antibiotics by 60%. From the height of a drone flight, you can see unusual structures that resemble giant mirrors that sparkle in the sun during the day, and emit a strange internal glow at night. This is how the Dutch greenhouse complexes look, and the area of some of them reaches 172 acres. Thanks to them, the country, which is not that far from the Arctic Circle, has become a world leader in the supply of tomatoes. The Netherlands is also considered the best supplier of potatoes and onions and the second largest producer of vegetables in the world. The country owes such achievements in agriculture to its Wageningen University, which is considered the best agro-industrial research institute in the world. This university is a key element of the Food Valley, where technological agricultural startups and experimental farms are developed. At the same time, the future of agriculture in the Netherlands is taking shape not in the negotiating rooms of large corporations and agricultural giants, but on thousands of family farms. It is also the lowest country in Europe. 26% of its territory is located below sea level. Approximately 60% of the population lives as much as 16 feet below sea level. And the lowest point of the country, Zuidplaaswater, at 23 feet. Naturally, most of the territory is protected by dams. For example, the country's main airport is Schiphol, which serves millions of passengers a year. And what about the people? People in the Netherlands are also peculiar. To begin with, the inhabitants of this country are considered the tallest people in Europe. The average height of an adult Dutchman is 6 feet. And the average height for women is almost 5 feet 7 inches. Scientists explain this feature as a genetic predisposition and the high level of nutrition and healthcare in the country. According to the researchers, the consumption of a large amount of dairy products plays a significant role in this. And also the fact that the Netherlands consistently occupies the highest positions in the rankings of the happiest countries in the world. Young people are especially happy with their country. According to a study by the National Statistics Office of the Netherlands, 94% of adolescents aged 12 to 18 years say that they are very happy with the conditions in which they live. The Netherlands legalized marijuana, so any adult resident can buy it in a coffee shop near their home, but for selling soft drugs to minors, you can get a very serious punishment. At the same time, a person who bought weed in a coffee shop has the right only to use it in an amount of no more than 5 grams per person. Also, you can grow up to 5 cannabis bushes at home for personal consumption. At the same time, the level of marijuana consumption in the Netherlands is one of the lowest in Europe. The Dutch have an interesting attitude to religion. Most of them are atheists. That's 40%. 30% are Catholic, and 20%, including the royal family, are Protestant. Most of the Protestants live in the north. This region even bears the appropriate name, the Bible Belt. The inhabitants of these parts are known for their religious conservatism. They are very serious, reserved, their whole life is subject to strict order and they don't like visitors. Tourists visiting the Netherlands are strongly advised not to visit these areas. By the way, there is a very interesting tradition associated with excessive religiosity. In the Netherlands, it is not customary to curtain the windows. It is believed that it appeared due to the citizens' commitment to the Protestant religion. So the faithful Dutch show that they have nothing to hide, and their way of life is consistent with Christian moral principles. Perhaps the same principle of openness is followed by the Dutch when they arrange joint gatherings in saunas. In fact, the Dutch traditionally bathe naked. They don't take work very seriously in general. More than half of the working-age population of the country works part-time. This is much more than in any other rich country in the world. At the same time, the Dutch are one of the most traveling nations in the world. At the age of 20 to 40, they often work and live for several years in other countries. So it is no wonder that the citizens of the Netherlands have a peculiar attitude to corporate culture. People who have moved to live and work in the Netherlands from other European countries often complain about the detachment of their Dutch colleagues. Since 2001, same-sex marriage has been legalized in the country. And since 2009, gay couples can adopt children. In fact, in Netherlands, as in many European countries, all primary school students must receive sex education by law. This education begins in kindergarten from the age of 4. 8-year-olds learn about gender stereotypes, and 11-year-olds discuss sexual orientation and contraception options. Whether this is good or bad can be discussed in the comments, but for now, we will note another interesting feature. It's perfectly normal for dads to take the day off from work to be with their kids. Dutch employers have long been accustomed to Dad's Day and often use it as an advantage during interviews or contract negotiations. And mothers here also have their own peculiarities. They pass this object from generation to generation. What do you think it is? Wrong. This is a chair for women in labor. More than 30% of women prefer to give birth at home. At the same time, an ambulance is not on duty near the house because resuscitation is expensive. Even if the birth takes place in a hospital, postpartum monitoring is carried out at home and the woman in labor is normally discharged from the hospital a few hours after delivery. They invite a visiting nurse, Kromzorg, whose duty is to teach the newly minted mother to take care of the child, feed, bathe, change diapers, etc., help with the child when the mother takes a rest, and run the household, wash the toilet and bathroom, clean the room where the mother and child are, clean the kitchen, wash and iron, change bed linen. And all this for 8 days, for several hours a day. All this is paid for by insurance. The state pension there is about €1,000, but a corporate pension is often much larger, as well as personal pension savings. However, this doesn't mean that when you see cheerful Dutch pensioners on cruises and other excesses, they are workaholics who saved up money for all their lives. After all, there is still the so-called old money. A large percentage of all gray-haired European travelers are simply descendants of quite rich people. Some of them have a property for rent, some have an inheritance, a small production, a restaurant, or just an amount in the account from previous generations. This is no wonder, because the Netherlands is a country that has created financial inventions in Europe, and in the world, without which it's difficult to imagine today's reality. And whether an evil or good financial genius could come up with these things, we'll see in a second. In 1602, the Amsterdam Stock Exchange appeared, which is considered the oldest of the existing ones. The Netherlands left a lot of traces in geographical names around the world. For example, New York was founded as a Dutch colony and was originally called New Amsterdam. The Dutch were also the first Europeans to set foot in Australia and New Zealand. Australia was then called New Holland, and New Zealand got its name in honor of the province of Zeeland, located on the territory of the Netherlands. As many as 3 Caribbean islands, Bonaire, Sint Eustatius, and Saba, are still part of the Netherlands. The inhabitants of these islands are full citizens of this country and have the right to participate in the elections to the European Union. In general, this historical time was quite interesting and cautionary for the Netherlands. Well, let's take this historical moment for example. Many people have heard this name, the East India Company, but not everyone knows that there were several of them: British, Danish, Portuguese, French, Austrian, and Swedish. So, when the Netherlands emerged as the foremost maritime and colonial power in Europe, the Dutch East India Company was one of the largest in the world. It was a state within a state. It had not only a monopoly in the conduct of foreign trade but also the rights to conclude international trade agreements, navigation, duty-free transportation of goods to the mother country, the creation of trading posts, fortified coastal fortresses, the conduct of legal proceedings, the maintenance of the armed forces and the navy. For that time, it was the coolest multinational corporation. And right before our eyes, the modern digital giants are gradually turning into similar ones, entangling every inhabitant of the planet with their networks. All they have to do is to build floating digital cities that will drift in neutral waters. And then they will not be states within a state but states outside of states. The Dutch East India Company was governed by a board of directors of 17 people, and in 1602 became the first joint stock company in the world, as it first offered its founders to share responsibility for the fate of sailing ships, and of course, to receive a share of the profits from new lands, treasures, and spices, which in Europe were worth their weight in gold. After all, only 1 ship out of 3 returned home, while the rest became victims of force majeure, pirates, storms, etc. But a successful trip brought a huge profit. Thus, the percentage of the possible profit of the shareholder directly depended only on the amount of his contribution, the measure of which was the first shares in the world. Until 1644, the dividends were paid in kind. Imported goods, mainly spices, then, only in money. By 1669, the company was the richest private firm in history, including over 150 commercial ships, 40 warships, 50,000 employees, including 25,000 employees in Asia and 3,000 employees in the Netherlands, and a private army of 10,000 soldiers. The company was involved in the political disputes of the time along with the states. Thus, in 1641, without the help of the Dutch state, it independently knocked out its competitors, the Portuguese, from present-day Indonesia. For this purpose, they created armed detachments from the local population at the company's expense. Moreover, in several colonial territories, the company had the right to mint coins. But, of course, the history of Holland is not limited to the East India Company. It has everything: the treachery of monarchs, civil wars, the flight of capital, the increase in internal taxes, and therefore the rise in prices. Or, for example, the foreign public debt that is a trending topic now, was quite workable 300 years ago. The Dutch were the first to realize that you can trade your debt, and trade at a profit. Or here's another scheme. Imagine a bank that accepts deposits, issues bonds to borrowers, and pays interest, say 6% per year. Every year, borrowers gather and receive interest throughout their lives. If one of them dies, then his share is divided among the living ones. The loan is considered repaid after the death of the last borrower. The loan amount is not refundable. According to this scheme, every year it is enough to have a 6% reserve for the payment of the entire debt, and the rest of the money can be used for any purpose. And here's another thing. Investing the money in the bonds of the national debt of England at 8% per annum, and under this issuing the bonds of the national debt of the Netherlands at 4% per annum. After all the manipulations, they had their 4% profit in their pocket. This manipulation was invented by around 25,000 people who lived in the Netherlands in 1785. Approximately 5,000 of them were engaged in banking and investment activities. Of these 5,000, approximately 500 were the largest banking tycoons not only in the Netherlands but also in the world. These 25,000 people in the Netherlands were divided into two groups, Sephardim and Ashkenazim. Ashkenazim at the end of the 18th century had more business with France and Germany, and Sephardim were involved with England and the United States. Although there were also reverse examples, like Mayer Amschel Rothschild, who being a German Jew, was a manager for William of Hesse Castle and was engaged in selling soldiers to the British during the French Revolution and bonuses for the dead. Since about 1785, the Bank of Amsterdam has been moving away from the principle of 100% reserve, which for 2 centuries made it the most reliable bank in the world, and moves first to 25% and then to 10% reserve. At the same time, Dutch investments in foreign banks and manufacturing were increasing significantly. Capital begins to flee from the Netherlands. At the same time, 90% of the Dutch income was concentrated in the hands of 8% of the people. The whole country worked to make sure that these 8% filled their pockets and became even richer. The people were getting poorer. These 8% didn't think much about the Netherlands. They were fine in London, New York, and Paris. They saw the Netherlands as a place where a bunch of beggars paid taxes on foreign debt payments. To sum up, the Netherlands is a unique example of a country that has been ruined by its own domestic debt and the completely predatory, usurious, banking nature of the economy. Historians say that the surprise is not that the Netherlands has left the arena of the great powers of Europe, but that it has stayed afloat for so long. But let's get back to the present. The Netherlands, being a country of contrasts, has managed to leave its trace in the development of modern technologies. It is known that in 2011, the Dutch city of Eindhoven received the status of the world's leading center of scientific discoveries. The Netherlands is also a leader in the development of high-tech equipment, as well as micro and nanotechnology. Approximately 94% of the Dutch population uses the internet. This is the highest rate in the world. It was Dutch companies that invented CDs and DVDs, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. In general, in the Netherlands, in some surprising way, quite contradictory phenomena are intertwined. Being a country of somewhat free morals, with super advanced technology, legalized prostitution, and light drugs, the Netherlands in some ways remains a very traditional and even puritanical country. That's all for now. Let us know in the comments what facts about the Netherlands surprised you the most. Thank you for liking this small, and hopefully objective review, and see you in the next videos on Subversion.